Today in the France 24 debate, we're looking at the situation inside of Iraq and wondering, is it time to return? With us to talk about it, with us to talk about it from London, Olivier Guitta of the Henry Jackson Society. Also joining us, thank you for being with us back in the France 24 debate. Also joining us in this edition is here in the studio Julian Howarth, who teaches international relations at Yale University. And joining us from Oxford in the UK, he was the ambassador to Libya for the UK, and he is now one of those who's signed on to a letter against Tony Blair still being the Middle East envoy. Thank you for being with us there from Oxford. The France 24 debate, where we're also pleased to welcome here in our studios. You're an Iraqi writer and also an author. Tell us where you were before. Alam Duran Suleiman, you were born in Baghdad. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much.
The France 24 debate, where you can join the conversation on Facebook and on Twitter. Our hashtag F24debate. In Erbil, John Kerry this Tuesday calling for an inclusive government for Iraq, while his host, the president of the Iraqi Kurdish region, Masoud Barzani, spoke of a new reality and a new Iraq. I'll start with you, Julian Howarth. Can Iraq keep it together at this point?
I really think it's probably too late. I think that the three bits of Iraq have never really hung together other than under a very, very strong man like Saddam Hussein. Going right back to 1921 and the birth of Iraq in this hotel in Cairo, it takes an awful lot to hang it together, to keep it hanging together. We've seen fractures regularly since Nouri al-Maliki came into power. It was bad from 2010 through till the new elections earlier this year. It has been very sectarian. He has, to a very large extent, destroyed the Iraqi armed forces, which were trained by the Americans and fairly cross-sectoral on competence. What Maliki has done has been to remove all of the Sunnis and the Kurds and make it into a kind of a Shia militia. But I think that the will among the potential members of this government to serve under Maliki is practically zero. So I don't know how he can do it, but all of the talk which we hear in Washington and London and other places about the possibility of having somebody else who will hold all these forces together, it almost beggars belief that at this stage, with this amount of drama and this amount of breakup in the country, that anybody can hold it together.
All right. So what you're saying is that no strong man, no Iraq?
Yeah.
Do you agree with that, Oliver Miles?
I'm not sure. I think it's too early to say, frankly. I think that the situation in Iraq is terrible. For more than a year now, for nearly 2 years, we've been having killings at the rate of 1,000 people a month, which is hopeless, unacceptable. Then, a couple of weeks ago, we were taken by surprise by this sudden fall of a big city, Mosul, the second city in Iraq. And that's made everybody wake up and realize what a mess Iraq is in. And now, if you read some of the headlines, you would think that the new Islamist regime of ISIL or ISIS, it doesn't make any difference which of those terms you use, let's call it ISIL, people think that that has become a threat to the whole region and a threat to virtually a world threat. I think that's very exaggerated. We've got to digest the new situation, understand what's happened. For the moment, the situation is more or less held because ISIL has seized territory full of people who are, to some extent, sympathetic with it. If it tries to go in any further, it will be on a much more difficult ground.
Olivier Guitta, do you agree?
I think that it is problematic that ISIS has seen so much help and so much support from the Sunni communities, but that's where the answer lies. Really, at this point, if you don't get the Sunni men on the street to be on your side, this is going into a civil war. And I agree with your first guess that Maliki has been the problem since the beginning as far as antagonizing this sectarian divide. And we need, at this point, a political situation. What happened during the surge back in 2006 when the Americans went to the Sunni tribe and say, you have to deal with Al-Qaeda in Iraq. Because if you don't do it, then the whole country goes to waste. And that's what we're seeing today, is that the Sunni tribes are closer to ISIS than to the Shias. And this is not going to be resolved by even airstrike or anything. It has to be done through a change of government to a unity government and bring everybody to the fold.
In that respect, is the United States going about it the right way, sending their U.S. Secretary of State to Iraq to try to get everyone on board for an inclusive government of national unity before there can be any airstrikes?
It's one thing to try to do it this way, but you have to put pressure. The problem is it looks like Obama has no handle on Maliki and on the Iranians. The Iranians are the key to the process. If you were to see what's happening now and how Iran is getting involved because it's at their doorstep, this is really a Sunni-Shia war that is threatening Iran more than any other country in the world. The Iranians have a vested interest. If they can get the Americans to do the dirty work for them, they will do it.
Rahman Daras Suleiman, is this how you see it?
Well, what I can say in this context, that in fact I'm against al-Maliki, first of all. The politics of Maliki over the last 8 years, creating many enemies, local and regional enemies, and he's unable to control or keeping his promises with the Kurdish or with the Sunnis or with the other Shiite parties. But the situation now, it's not only the government and not only al-Maliki. The crisis, the real crisis, is the crisis of the regime, the political regime entirely. Even if it comes someone other, different from al-Maliki, with the same condition that controlling the situation in Iraq, that's mean the same kind of partnerships and the same kind of conflicts between the political parties around the wealth, power, and influence. That's mean each party, he wants the more part of the government.
All right, so when you hear Olivier Guitta saying that he's worried that effectively the Americans are going to be doing the Iranians' dirty work inside of Iraq, what's your reaction? Would you like to see the U.S. and Iran?
Well, if you permit me, Mr. Olivier, just to say, especially now, Iran running after United States and want to win the agreement of United States. And it's the good time for United States to coming in Iraq, because they know very well the situation is different from 2003. Beside of that, it's the best time for United States to attack, to put a strong attack to the terrorism, without its cost the United States big.
All right, so you're saying the United States has leverage because of those nuclear negotiations that are taking place with Iran on the side. We're getting reactions from a lot of viewers, including one that says, when it is about humanitarian issues, the West should intervene. Otherwise, it is not necessary. Now, the U.S. Secretary of State, John Kerry, when he was in Baghdad on Monday, spelled out what is the common interest he sees between the U.S. and Iraq.
Naturally, the Americans have a very special responsibility as far as Iraq is concerned, as one can tell from the reaction.
Okay, that was the German Chancellor, Angela Merkel. We'll hear from her in a short while. the U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, who spoke after meeting with Nouri al-Maliki, but also with other prominent political leaders in Baghdad.
Iraq is a strategic partner of the United States, with shared interests in countering the scourge of terrorism, maintaining stability of the global energy markets, and easing the sectarian polarization that plagues this region. That's how we have to understand the stakes here in Iraq. And that's why we have to understand the serious threat that ISIL poses to Iraq and the urgent need for Iraq's security forces to therefore be well-supplied, well-equipped, and well-trained. That is why President Obama has prepared a range of options for Iraq, including enhanced intelligence, joint operations centers, steady supplies of munitions, and advisors to work with and support some of Iraq's best units.
All right, Oliver Miles, is that a smart way of preparing things, or is it too late? The Americans are dragged in again.
I think it's almost irrelevant, but I think that it's better to talk than to send troops or to bomb. At the moment, we don't know enough about the situation, and what we do know about the situation suggests that the Iraqis themselves have got to move to sort it out. Goodwill from foreign powers like America or Britain or France is better than bad will. But I think the idea of military intervention is very alluring if you're that way inclined. It's easy to think that by some bombing we're going to settle things, but you won't. You'll make it worse. What's got to happen is that the Iraqis have got to come to terms with themselves, and that probably means an end to al-Maliki. It doesn't mean an end to Shia predominance in Iraq, because the Shia are the majority, but it means they've got to work together.
Olivier Guitta, do you agree?
I think the military intervention in Iraq right now will not yield any results because of what I said. The live together fabric in the society doesn't exist any longer. The problem is that, you know, the writing was on the wall. The fact that Britain, France, and the US didn't intervene in Syria was the main tipping point. Because remember, ISIS is the old Al-Qaeda in Iraq, but has been much more present in fighting Assad than going back into Iraq. But we saw the signs a few weeks ago. 2 Frenchmen that went to fight into Syria were sent to become suicide bombers in Iraq. And this was the sign that ISIS was going back into Iraq, which is, at the moment, their main objective. But look, if 800 members of ISIS were able to fight off and win over 30,000 Iraqi soldiers because they were just deserting, we have a problem here.
Julian Howarth?
Yeah, I think that the military situation is one where intervention by the United States would be counterproductive in almost every way. And I think Obama knows that. My sense is that the last thing he really wants to do is to get heavily back involved here. As far as the future of the country, though, is concerned, we talk about this unity government. But my sense is that, you know, even within the Constitution of 2005, there is the possibility of having separate regions. There was going to be a Shiite region in the south. The Kurds already have their independent region. So I think that the situation now is one where the Sunnis are not going to settle for anything less than very, very considerable control over their own region. I think it's very significant that on this occasion, and it's different from 2006, 2007, the Sunni tribes and the Sunni populations do not seem to be wanting to engage in a war against ISIS in the way in which they engaged in a war against Al-Qaeda. That was a war they started before the Americans actually arrived. Now we've got a very different situation, and I think the conditions are in place for a Sunni set of districts or regions to become relatively autonomous.
And if there is a political deal in Baghdad, what happens to ISIS? Do they melt away?
No, and that's why the political deal in Baghdad is not, to my mind, going to make a great deal of difference to this situation. We're beyond the politics of it at this point, I think.
All right, reaction on Twitter. Derek saying most humans respond or get involved in things they perceive as in their own interests, regardless of the location. Oliver Miles, we're getting news of a French national arrested in Beirut this Tuesday, suspected of trying to join ISIS or being a member of. Is this Europe's problem?
There's been a lot of talk about this in Britain, and I think in other European countries, fear that if people from Britain, Muslims from Britain, go and fight in Syria, that will automatically increase the terrorist threat in Britain. I think that's jumping ahead of the evidence myself. I stick to the position that what's happened in Iraq is something that, and in Syria, insofar as ISIS are across the border, this is something that's got to be sorted out on the ground. It's too early for us to say whether the tribes are going to react as they did in the earlier occasion when they fought against Al-Qaeda. Who knows? They may well, they may not. They may come to an agreement with them. Personally, my money's on the probability that the apparent unity of the ISIL with the population, with the Sunni population in Western Iraq, will soon break down. But that's only a guess. I can't tell, nor can you.
All right, we'll talk about ISIS's strengths and weaknesses when we come back. Stay with us. You're watching the France 24 debate.